I tossed the divorce papers onto the table in front of Victoria Beaumont. Your long-lost love is back in the country. The contract's over. She suddenly tore the agreement to shreds, a cold smile playing on her lips. I've changed my mind. So, the third time Julian Vance decided to provoke me, I broke 3 of his ribs. Victoria stood over his hospital bed, screaming at me. Are you insane? The single sheet of paper, the divorce agreement, landed softly on Victoria Beaumont's ridiculously expensive sofa. She was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse, swirling a glass of red wine. The city lights of Manhattan glittered below, casting a beautiful, lonely glow on her face, but they couldn't cut through the untouchable icy reserve she wore like a second skin. Here, sign it. Your Julian Vance landed at JFK at 3 this afternoon. He's probably just clearing customs now. Congratulations, Ms. Beaumont. After 3 long years, the leading man is back. It's time for this little show of ours to end. My voice was flat, mechanical, like I was closing out a project file. Victoria's hand froze. She didn't look at the papers, didn't look at me. She just kept swirling the wine in her glass with those slender fingers. After half a minute, maybe more, she finally turned her head. She looked at me and said, "You certainly keep well informed." Her voice, perhaps softened by the wine, had a hint of an alluring rasp, but it was still cold enough to freeze hell over. Her eyes drifted from me to the single piece of A4 paper on her sofa. I stretched my lips into a professional smile. It's part of the job, Ms. Beaumont. A contract requires professionalism. The 3-year term is up. You get your freedom, and I get the hell out of your way. Isn't this what you wanted from the start? A shield to deal with your family's old money obsession with marriage and heirs, someone to fend off the usual sharks and parasites. Now that the real thing is back, it's time for the placeholder to make a graceful exit. I nodded, tore the papers. It's just a signature. Let's make it quick. The second you sign, I'll pack my things and be gone. I won't leave so much as a stray hair behind. Her face was its usual mask of cold indifference. She picked up the papers. There wasn't much to read. The agreement stipulated I walk away with nothing, which was fine. She'd already paid me what was owed over the past 3 years. After a quick glance, she looked back at me and set her wine glass down on the coffee table. You don't want anything else. You have a good sense of humor, Miss Beaumont, I said with a slight smile. I'm a professional. I deliver a quality service, keep things clean, and never ask for more than I owe. I watched as she raised her right hand. I expected her to pick up a pen and sign her name with that sharp, elegant signature she used on countless corporate documents. I was wrong, dead wrong. She didn't reach for a pen. Her hand shot out and grabbed the divorce agreement. Rare up, the sharp sound of tearing paper shattered the room's silence. Before I could even process it, the agreement I'd spent half an hour printing and proofreading was reduced to a pile of scraps in her perfectly manicured hands. As she looked at me and sneered, "A quality service." I was completely stunned, my mind a total blank. "Caleb Flynn, are you really that desperate to leave?" she hissed, her voice sharp. She took a few quick steps toward me in her slippers, closing the distance until I was enveloped in the scent of her expensive perfume and red wine. She stared daggers at me, and I could see the raw fury burning in her eyes. Desperate, I stammered. I had to admit her intensity was throwing me off balance. It only lasted a second. I found my footing. "Victoria, have you lost your mind? When we signed this damn contract, it was spelled out in black and white. 3 years purely transactional. No strings attached. Now the time is up. Your precious Julian is back, and you want to stick around? What for? To be the third wheel for you 2 lovebirds? Or should I just wait for you to have security throw me out?" I pointed at the confetti of paper on the floor, a hot surge of anger rising in my own chest. What the hell was that? If you're having a psychotic break, go see a shrink. Don't take it out on me. She looked at me as if I just told the funniest joke in the world, a glacial smirk forming on her lips, but the fire in her eyes burned even hotter. A psychotic break? Yes, maybe I am. I've changed my mind. Caleb, this marriage? We're not ending it. She hammered out those last few words, each one a stone thrown in my head. I felt like I was in a fever dream. The absurdity of it all washed away in my anger, replaced by sheer disbelief. I actually laughed. Not ending it? Victoria, get a grip. This was a business deal, not a fairy tale. The one that got away. The man you've been pining for 3 years is back, and you're pulling this soap opera routine with me. Did you forget who you're talking to? I ran a hand through my hair in frustration, a vein throbbing in my temple. Fine. You don't want to sign? No problem. Kinko's is open 24/7. I'll bring you another copy tomorrow. You tear one up, I'll print 10 more. Let's see what runs out first. Your patience or my printer ink. You're signing this one way or another. This divorce is happening. Done. I was done looking at her beautiful, infuriating, impossible face. I didn't have the energy to figure out what kind of twisted game she was playing with this sudden reversal. I turned to leave, wanting nothing more than to escape the suffocating weirdness of that room. The contract was over. We go our separate ways. It was simple. Victoria's sudden breakdown was just a complication. A massive, annoying complication. I hate complications, and I hate when my plans get screwed up, but the complications were just beginning. Victoria's baffling refusal to divorce me was like opening Pandora's box. And the first slimy little demon to crawl out was Julian Vance. The man who was supposedly a brilliant, charming artist, the one that got away, who Victoria had supposedly waited 3 years for. In reality, he was a self-important, condescending prick. The first time was at a members-only club downtown. I had just finished a meeting with a business partner when I ran into him in the hallway. He was surrounded by a posse of hangers-on, dressed in a tailored suit, his hair slicked back like some kind of wannabe movie villain. He had that classic artist look on his face, a blend of moody melancholy and detached superiority that just screamed. When he saw me, his eyes, deep set and framed by long lashes, filled with undisguised contempt. Well, if it isn't Victoria's little Mr. Flynn, he said, drawing out my name with a light mocking tone. All by yourself? Victoria couldn't make it. Oh, that's right. She and I have been so busy catching up, discussing some new projects. She's been occupied. He stepped closer, and a wave of cologne that smelled like someone had sprayed air freshener in a pile of garbage hit me. He lowered his voice, a venomous whisper meant only for me. You've been warming her bed for 3 years. Don't you think it's time to move your ass? A placeholder is a placeholder. The real thing is back. So, why don't you do us all a favor and crawl back under whatever rock you came from? It's pathetic. Really? Victoria is too soft-hearted to kick you out, but you can't possibly think you actually matter to her, do you? The sick offense behind him let out a few muffled, derisive snickers. Victoria's refusal to sign the papers had already put me on edge. Now, this clown was poking the bear. My hands balled into fists at my sides. I took a sharp step forward. He clearly hadn't expected that. The smug look on his face vanished, replaced by a flicker of fear, and he instinctively started to back away. But just as my fist was a fraction of an inch from his self-satisfied face, a cold voice echoed down the hall. Caleb, what do you think you're doing? Victoria had appeared out of nowhere, dressed in a sharp black power suit, her makeup flawless. Her eyes were locked on me, or more precisely on my raised fist. It was like a switch flipped in Julian's head. He instantly found his courage, his fear melting away into a mask of victimhood and indignation. Victoria, you saw him. He was going to hit me. I was just trying to have civil conversation, and he just snapped. It's terrifying. Victoria didn't even look at him. Her gaze remained fixed on me. Caleb, I'm warning you for the last time. Stay away from Julian and drop the gutter tactics, or you'll regret it. My fist, still hanging in the air, trembled slightly. Julian's face, peeking out from behind Victoria's shoulder, was a sickening mix of triumph and relief. Gutter tactics. I stared back at her, searching her cold, protective eyes for any sign of doubt, any crack in the facade. There was nothing, just a frozen wall of ice shielding Julian Vance. The rage boiling in my chest was forced back down. I lowered my fist. It wasn't surrender. It was the suffocating feeling of utter pointlessness. Hitting him now, with her standing there, would solve nothing. A grim, ugly smile spread across my face as I looked at the man hiding behind a woman. Julian, you better pray to whatever God you believe, and that the next time we meet, Victoria is just as timely with her little rescue mission. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence, and every single person in the hallway heard it. Without another look at any of them, I turned and strode away. Behind me, I could hear Julian's voice, artificially loud and full of bluster. Victoria, do you hear that? He's threatening me. I left his whining behind me, along with the stench of his cologne and the ice in Victoria's eyes. That first warning was a stone dropped into a deep lake. It made a few ripples, but it changed nothing. No, that's not true. It did change something. It made Julian Vance fatally misjudge where my breaking point was, and it made him believe foolishly that Victoria's protection was absolute. The second provocation came faster, and it was even cheaper. It was a few evenings later. I was heading to my usual boxing gym. I just parked my unassuming black Jeep and was about to get out when a flashy, bright yellow McLaren screeched to a halt, cutting in at a sharp angle. It stopped inches from my front bumper, completely blocking my driver's side door. The butterfly door swung open, revealing Julian's punchable face. Today he was in an even more obnoxious blue suit, his hair greased back, that same self-satisfied smirk plastered on his face. TSK, fancy seeing you here, Mr. Flynn. What's the matter? Bad day? Need to punch a bag to let off some steam? I get it. It must be tough being a stray dog kicked to the curb. A man's got to have somewhere to lick his wounds. He leaned casually against his car door, his eyes filled with the malicious glee of a cat toying with a mouse. He sauntered over to my driver's side window, bent down, and stared at me through the glass, his expression a mask of pure, unadulterated provocation. You know, Victoria has been in such a good mood lately, he said, drawing out his words. She's been telling me all about the past, the present, and the future. She said if her family hadn't been pressuring her so hard back then, she never would have ended up with someone like you. Well, you know, it's all good now. I'm back, and she finally doesn't have to pretend to be happy with a cheap imitation. He leaned closer, his mouth almost touching the glass, and lowered his voice. Oh, and she also said that every single day with you made her skin crawl, especially the thought of having to sleep in the same bed as you. A dull thud cut off his venomous little speech. It wasn't my fist. It was me shoving my driver's side door open with all my strength. The heavy steel door of the Jeep, fueled by my rage, slammed squarely into Julian, who was still bent over, completely unprepared. Ark! A short, sharp scream tore from his throat as the force of the impact sent him stumbling backward. He flailed for a moment before collapsing in a pathetic heap on the concrete parking lot. His perfectly styled hair was a mess. His expensive blue suit was covered in dust, and the smug smile on his face was replaced by a twisted mask of pain and shock. I stepped out of the Jeep and looked down at him as he writhed on the ground like a helpless beetle flipped onto its shell. I looked at him like he was a piece of trash. Skin crawl, I said, crouching down. You better hope that the next time you decide to run that sewer you call a mouth, there isn't a car door handy. He was curled up in pain, his forehead beaded with cold sweat. The look in his eyes was a mixture of terror and disbelief. His lips trembled, but he couldn't manage a single word. I stood up, didn't give him a second glance, and walked toward the entrance of the gym. Behind me, I could hear his muffled groans and the gasps of a few passers-by. I knew that this time, Victoria's timely rescue hadn't made it. But the trouble wasn't over. Julian's stupidity and his inability to learn a lesson seemed to be directly proportional to his narcissism. The third time was in the VIP lounge of a high-end department store. I was just there to have coffee with a client from out of town, finalizing the details of a contract. I had just walked my client to the door and was heading to the restroom when, in the quiet corridor, I ran into Julian Vance yet again. The bruise on his face hadn't fully faded, and he was walking with a slight, unnatural stiffness, but that nauseating arrogance of his seemed to be welded to his very bones. The moment he saw me, a flash of instinctual fear crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a stronger, more venomous need for revenge. He probably thought that in a crowded public place like this, I wouldn't dare touch him. He deliberately blocked my path, forcing a fake smile onto his face. His voice was pitched just loud enough for a few people milling around. Tisk, you're like a bad smell that just won't go away. Caleb, what's the point of clinging to Victoria like some kind of leech? She told me herself. The very sight of you makes her sick to her stomach. She asked me to pass along a message. Get lost on your own, or she'll be forced to ruin you professionally. I kept my cool. A man who lives off a woman like you. This time there was no car door, no glass between us. The security camera on the ceiling blinked its tiny red light. The air smelled of expensive perfume. A soft piano melody drifted from a lounge. Everything about the situation screamed, be civilized. Stay calm. This is not the place. The hell with civilized. Julian's mouth opening and closing as it spewed filth was a lit fuse. The rage I'd suppressed the last 2 times, the frustration for Victoria tearing up the divorce papers, and this idiot's relentless, suicidal provocations. All of it detonated at once. A white-hot fury shot straight to my brain. My world went silent. The music, the distant chatter, even the sound from Julian's still-moving lips, all disappeared. My body moved before my brain could catch up. No hesitation, no warning. The instant the words kept man left his mouth, I lunged forward. My right leg shot out like a steel whip aimed directly at his side. Flat crack. A sickening thud, followed by the unmistakable sound of bones snapping, exploded in the quiet corridor. A god. Julian's scream was high and sharp like a rooster being strangled. He went airborne, flying sideways into the decorative wall paneling on the opposite side of the hall. Whump. The heavy impact seemed to shake the entire wall. He slid to the floor like a sack of wet cement, curling into a fetal position. His body twitched violently, his hands clutching his ribs. Beads of sweat instantly soaked his meticulously styled hair. He was in so much pain, he couldn't even scream properly anymore. The world was silent again. The few people who had been passing by were frozen in place, their faces masks of horror and disbelief as if they had just witnessed a murder. I stood there, my eyes coldly scanning the twitching pile of garbage on the floor. Then I turned and walked toward the men's room. Complications to hell with complications. There's a limit to patience. Since Victoria wanted to make my life difficult by refusing the divorce, I just had to make her life more difficult with Julian's broken bones. This time, Victoria's timely rescue was a complete and utter failure. By the time the ambulance was wailing its way to the hospital with Julian inside, I was sitting in an interrogation room at the local precinct. When Victoria arrived, her perfect face was colder than a tombstone. The look she gave me was worse than the one you'd give your mortal enemy. The hospital smelled overpoweringly of antiseptic. In a private, high-end room, Julian lay on the sterile white bed like a broken marionette, hooked up to a mess of wires and tubes. His fluttering eyelashes, however, betrayed the fact that he was wide awake. On the bedside table was the medical report. Linear fractures of the 7th, 8th, and 9th ribs on the left side, with associated soft tissue contusions. Victoria had gone to speak with the doctor. I had been invited to the room to apologize to Julian. The door to the room was thrown open with a loud bang. Victoria stormed in like a blizzard. She didn't even glance at Julian playing dead on the bed. She marched straight up to me. She was still in her black business suit. Her makeup was still perfect, but her beautiful eyes were blazing with a fire hot enough to incinerate me. Caleb, are you insane? Huh. Her voice was shrill, distorted by rage. She raised her hand as if to slap me, but it froze in midair. Instead, she jabbed a perfectly manicured finger right at my nose. Do you have any idea what you've done? In broad daylight, in front of everyone, you could have killed him. That's 3 ribs, Caleb. 3. Her chest heaved, her words dripping with suffocating fury. What is the law to you? A joke? Do you think I'm just going to let this slide? Are you actively trying to go to prison? The room was dead silent. I leaned against the cold wall, my hands stuffed in my pockets, my face a blank mask as I watched her tirade. Her objective was clear, to champion the cause of the pathetic creature in the bed. The whole scene was so absurd it was almost funny. While I'd never had any illusions about her, I couldn't deny that her fury extinguished some faint, lingering spark of something I didn't even know was there. A coldness settled deep in my chest. I pulled one corner of my mouth into a slight sneer. "The law," I said slowly. Then my eyes shifted to the man pretending to be asleep in the bed. "Julian, you listen to me, and you listen good. This time was 3 ribs. Think of it as interest on your debt." My voice was low, but it carried a chilling, bone-deep finality. The next time you dare to show your face in front of me, whether it's in a mall, a restaurant, on the street, or in Victoria Beaumont's goddamn bed, I promise you, I will make sure you spend the rest of your miserable life in a wheelchair. Do you understand me? My gaze was glacial. "Caleb, what are you talking about?" "Shut your mouth." Victoria was trembling with rage, her voice a sharp command. But on the bed, the unconscious Julian flinched violently. He couldn't keep up the act any longer. His eyes flew open, and his normally arrogant gaze was now filled with pure, unadulterated terror. He stared at me, his lips quivering as he instinctively tried to shrink back under the covers. Victoria froze, stunned. She clearly hadn't expected such a dramatic and pathetic reaction from him. Mission accomplished. I didn't spare either of them another glance. Ignoring Victoria's murderous glare and Julian's terrified one, I straightened up and walked out of the room, leaving the smell of antiseptic and broken promises behind me. The wheelchair warning worked like a charm, even better than I'd expected. Julian Vance completely vanished. Not literally, of course, but he evaporated from my world. The carefully orchestrated chance encounter stopped. He no longer showed up at any of my usual spots. There were no more attempts to send his nauseating provocations my way. It culminated at a high-profile charity gala. As Victoria is legal, I grew amazed at the thought. Husband, I had to attend. That woman still hadn't signed the papers. Across the glittering, crowded ballroom, I saw him. Julian was holding court, surrounded by a circle of socialites. He seemed to have recovered well, dressed in a bespoke tuxedo, that pretentious smile back on his face as he pontificated about something. Then his eyes happened to drift in my direction. Time seemed to freeze. The smile on his face instantly solidified. His pupils dilated in a split second of pure panic. His entire body jerked, and the champagne in his hands slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The chatter around him died instantly. Every eye turned to him, but Julian didn't seem to notice. His eyes were locked on me, his expression that of a man seeing a ghost. A moment later, in front of everyone, he completely abandoned his carefully crafted image. He shoved aside one of the women next to him and practically scrambled for the exit, almost tripping over his own feet. An awkward, heavy silence fell over the ballroom, followed by a wave of hushed whispers and curious glances. I stood my ground, a glass of whiskey in my hand, watching his pathetic figure disappear. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, especially the sudden, venomous glare from Victoria. An indescribable wave of satisfaction washed over me. Damn, that felt good. Beating him up was a physical release. But branding his soul with terror, making him flee at the mere sight of me, that level of absolute dominance was a whole different kind of thrill. I ignored Victoria's icy stare and downed my whiskey in one gulp. The annoying fly that was Julian Vance had finally been swatted. Smeared, in fact, now it was time to deal with the final problem. The woman who tore up the contract, the one who inexplicably refused to let me go. Later that night, I leaned back in a leather chair in my home office. The cigarette between my fingers burned down to the filter. On the desk in front of me was a fresh copy of the divorce agreement. Ever since she had torn up the first one, I'd had my lawyer print 249 more. They were stacked in the corner. I picked up a pen, and in the space for Party B, I signed my name with a decisive flick of the wrist. Then I picked up the signed document and walked toward the master bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Victoria was standing with her back to me in front of the massive mirror in her walk-in closet. She had just showered. A soft silk robe was draped over her body, revealing the elegant line of her neck. She seemed to be choosing a nightgown, holding up 2 different slip dresses to the mirror. Hearing the door, she paused, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. The face in the glass, stripped of its daytime sharpness and cold fury, had a rare softness to it. It was almost languid. She said nothing, just watched me, her expression unreadable. I strode over to her. No pleasantries, no small talk. I held the signed divorce agreement out to her. Sign it. Julian's gone. He won't be bothering you anymore. This whole farce can finally be over. My voice was flat. After all this, I came to a new conclusion. Julian probably wasn't her long-lost love. More likely, she was just using me to get rid of a persistent annoyance. Victoria's gaze shifted from my reflection to the paper in my hand. Her eyes lingered on the black ink for a few seconds, her long lashes casting shadows on her cheeks. Then, she looked up, meeting my eyes in the mirror again. This time, the corner of her mouth curved upward slowly into a smile. It wasn't a happy smile, nor was it an angry one. It was faint, subtle, but it held a strange, unsettling quality, like a predator watching its prey finally walk into the trap. She didn't reach for the papers. Instead, she let the nightgowns drop from her hand. She turned to face me. The silk robe parted slightly with the movement, revealing more of her smooth, pale skin. The strange smile on her face deepened. "Divorce," she whispered, her voice husky from the steam of her shower, sending a strange tingle down my spine. She shook her head, a slow, elegant motion as if dismissing a ridiculous suggestion. "Caleb, I think you've misunderstood something." She took a small step forward, so close I could smell the fresh feminine scent of her skin. "I never said I wasn't divorcing you because of Julian. Whether he comes back or disappears has absolutely nothing to do with it." Her voice was soft, almost a purr. She paused, and the smile bloomed fully on her lips. The moment the words left her mouth, a dark premonition washed over me. It wasn't about Julian. Then why tear up the papers? Why refuse the divorce? Why let him provoke me twice before I snapped? What the hell did she want? My instinct screamed at me to back away, to put some distance between us. But just as my body tended to move, she moved first. Her right hand, hidden until now in a wide sleeve of her robe, shot out, and it was a small, elegant atomizer. PSSD, a faint hiss. A cold, strangely sweet-smelling mist shot directly into my face. My brain screamed a silent alarm. Chloroform. Actually, a powerful wave of dizziness hit me, like a sledgehammer. Victoria's smiling face began to blur. The crystal chandelier on the ceiling fractured into 1,000 shimmering lights. I managed to force out a single slurred word before my body gave out completely. In the last second before I blacked out, I thought I saw her arms reaching out to catch my falling body. The smile on her face was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was triumphant, predatory. Damn it. I walked right into it. Then total darkness. I don't know how long it was, a second or an eternity. A faint, warm sensation gently stirred my senses. The feeling was on my lips, soft, wet, with a gentle, insistent pulling. A suction that would not be denied. Next, my sense of smell returned. An overwhelming wave of feminine fragrance and the salty, musky scent of sweat after exertion flooded my nostrils. It was so potent, so real. Slowly, as if fighting through mud, my senses came back online. With a massive effort, I forced my eyes open. My vision was blurry, swimming, like looking through a pane of rippling water. The first thing I saw was a field of smooth, pale white, incredibly close. It was moving. My eyes struggled to focus, traveling upward until they met another pair just inches from my own. Victoria, she was on top of me. Her entire body was covering mine. Her arms were braced on either side of my shoulders. That impossibly beautiful face hovered just centimeters from mine. A few strands of her damp hair fell across my cheek and neck, tickling me. She clearly hadn't expected me to wake up so soon. Her movements froze. Her gorgeous eyes, for a split second, showed a flash of genuine surprise. But just as quickly, the surprise was replaced by something far more intense. It was a look of crazed possessiveness, of a deep, almost pathological satisfaction. It was terrifyingly bright. She didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned closer, her hot breath ghosting across my lips. "You're awake." Her voice was no longer the cool, crisp tone of a CEO. It was a husky, throaty purr, saturated with a lazy, raw magnetism. The drug wore off a little faster than I expected. She let out a low laugh, a sound laced with an unnerving intimacy and contentment. Every muscle in my body went rigid. A tidal wave of shock and a violent feeling of violation made me want to fight to throw her off. But my limbs felt like wet noodles. I had no strength. All I could do was grind out a few broken words. "You drugged me, Victoria." She pressed a single delicate finger to my lips, silencing my useless curses. Her body shifted slightly, her eyes locking onto mine. There was no guilt on her face, no remorse, only a fervent, almost maniacal focus. Then she spoke, her voice a soft, deadly whisper. "Caleb, actually, 3 years ago, on the day we signed that contract," she paused, a twisted, predatory smile spreading across her lips. Her beautiful eyes curved into crescents, but they churned with a terrifying, obsessive light. "I wanted to do this then. I also wanted to lock you in my basement." "My basement?" Boom! A bomb went off in my head. My thoughts were obliterated, leaving nothing but white noise. 3 years ago, the day we signed the contract, the basement, all the details I had ignored, the strange, intense emotion I'd seen in her eyes when she tore up the agreement. Her bizarrely passive reaction to Julian's first 2 provocations. It all clicked into place, forming a single horrifying truth. She didn't want to stay married. She had never intended to let me go. From the very beginning, this so-called contract marriage was nothing but an elaborate cage, and I was the prize she had been hunting all along. An icy chill, sharp and painful, shot down my spine. I stared up at the beautiful, terrifying face so close to my own and realized for the first time that I had fallen into a pit far deeper and more hopeless than I could have ever imagined. My throat was so dry I could barely make a sound. A psycho. Victoria completely ignored my accusation. If anything, the sick smile on her face grew brighter. The finger on my lips didn't move. It traced their outline with a possessive touch. "A psycho," she repeated softly, her voice filled with a strange satisfaction. "Maybe, but Caleb, do you have any idea how hard these 3 years have been? Watching you walk around my life every day. Technically my husband, but acting like a cold, unfeeling machine. Do you know what kind of self-control that took?" Her body pressed down again, her heat sinking into me, her warm breath, smelling of roses and something dangerously primal, washed over my face. "Julian Vance, that idiot," she scoffed, her tone dripping with contempt. "Who does he think he is? He was nothing more than a tool. A tool to provoke you. Watching him push your buttons again and again, watching the anger and disgust build in your eyes. You have no idea how exciting it was for me." Her voice rose, laced with a twisted glee. "Especially that day at the mall when you kicked him, when you broke his ribs, Caleb. The look in your eyes, you were like a cornered lion, finally unleashed. Vicious, savage, filled with this incredible destructive power. It was so captivating. So captivating it made my knees weak. It's a shame I could only watch it on the security footage." As she spoke, she actually ground her hips against mine, letting out a soft, contented sigh. It all made sense now. Every one of Julian's provocations had been with her permission, maybe even at her encouragement. She got off on my anger. She enjoyed watching Julian get his ass kicked by me. This woman wasn't just complicated. She was a goddamn psychopath. Get off me. I used every last ounce of my remaining strength to struggle. But my arms only managed a pathetic lift from the mattress before falling uselessly back down. "Get off." Victoria sounded as if I'd said something hilarious. She leaned down, her hot lips almost touching my earlobe. "Caleb, my dear husband, I waited 3 years for this day. Now that I finally have you right where I want you, do you really think I'm going to let go?" Her voice dropped to a horrifying, syrupy whisper thick with obsession. "From the moment I saw you fight for me at that club 3 years ago, I knew you were mine. You could only ever be mine." A club? A fight? Fuzzy fragments of a memory surfaced. 3 years ago, a chaotic night at some second-rate club, a business dinner I couldn't get out of, some drunk new money getting handsy with a woman. And then, yeah, I lost my temper. I beat the fat pig senseless, put him in the hospital. In the crowd of onlookers, my eyes shot to Victoria's, inches from mine. In their beautiful, insane depths, I saw the reflection of my own dawning horror. She was that woman. The club was so dark, and I'd been drinking. I never even got a clear look at her face. Remember now? She smiled like a cat that had not only gotten the cream, but had also drowned a farmer in the vat. Her fingers trailed from my cheek down to the hollow of my throat. The way you looked back then, coiled with aggression. Your eyes like knives, your movements so clean and lethal, like a panther. That fat bastard was like a rag doll in your hands. Her breathing grew heavier. Her skin felt feverish against mine. From that moment, I made up my mind. I had to have you by any means necessary. To hell with Julian Vance. To hell with family alliances. None of it mattered. Only you. Only that wildness, that savagery inside of you, Caleb. That's what I want. She lowered her head, and her lips, tasting of roses and obsession, crashed down on mine. It wasn't a kiss. It was a brand, a declaration of ownership. It was brutally possessive, pathologically dominant. Her tongue tried to force its way past my clenched teeth. I twisted my head, using the last drags of my strength to break the insane contact. Get off! I roared, my voice raw and distorted with fury and weakness. My resistance only seemed to excite her more. Victoria lifted her head, not a trace of anger on her face at being rejected, only a brighter, more twisted gleam in her eyes. So wild, so perfect. She panted, a feverish blush rising on her cheeks. Her gaze was hazy, dangerous. This is what I love about you. The more you fight back, Caleb, the more excited I get. There's no thrill greater than taming an untamable lion, is there? These 3 years, her eyes roamed over my exposed chest. Every single day, I dreamed about this. I dreamed of locking you up, keeping you all to myself. I dreamed of this body, these powerful hands, these savage eyes burning for me and me alone. Her fingertips, trailing sparks, slid across my collarbone, my chest with a possessive air of someone admiring a prized acquisition. And now she leaned down, her scorching lips finding the side of my neck. I finally caught you. God damn it. No, I should be on top. For the first time since I was a child, I felt a tear of pure, helpless humiliation escape my iron slide, silently down my temple.